Have you ever wondered why people walk all over you? Why your silence is mistaken for agreement? Why your kindness time and time again is repaid with manipulation, disappointment, and quiet disrespect? You call it being nice. Society calls it good behavior. But Nietzsche would call it what it truly is: self-betrayal masquerading as virtue. Let's begin with a truth no one dares to say out loud. Niceness is not a virtue. It's a disguise. A mask forged in fear, worn in the desperate hope that by pleasing others, you might avoid rejection, judgment, or conflict. But in that act of self-erasure, you lose something far more dangerous: your power. From the time you were a child, you were rewarded for being agreeable. You learned to smile when you were hurt, to stay quiet when you were angry, to nod even when your soul screamed no. You learned that your worth depended on your ability to make others comfortable. And so you became good. You became liked, but you also became invisible. Nietzsche warned us, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. But what if the abyss is not the external world? It's the polite, smiling version of you that everyone loves but no one respects. Have you ever wondered why people walk all over you? Why your silence is mistaken for agreement? Why your kindness time and time again is repaid with manipulation, disappointment, and quiet disrespect? You call it being nice. Society calls it good behavior. But Nietzsche would call it what it truly is: self-betrayal masquerading as virtue. Let's begin with a truth no one dares to say out loud. Niceness is not a virtue. It's a disguise. A mask forged in fear, worn in the desperate hope that by pleasing others, you might avoid rejection, judgment, or conflict. But in that act of self-erasure, you lose something far more dangerous: your power. From the time you were a child, you were rewarded for being agreeable. You learned to smile when you were hurt, to stay quiet when you were angry, to nod even when your soul screamed no. You learned that your worth depended on your ability to make others comfortable. And so you became good. You became liked, but you also became invisible. Nietzsche warned us, whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. But what if the abyss is not the external world? It's the polite, smiling version of you that everyone loves but no one respects. People don't respect nice. They respect real. They respect boundaries. They respect clarity. They respect the person who can say no without apology. Niceness is not love. It is submission disguised as care. In the name of being nice, you betray your instincts. You suppress your anger. You pretend to enjoy what you loathe, and over time you become a ghost of your former self. You are always agreeable, always available, always adjusting, but inside, something is decaying. Your authenticity, your power, your self-respect. Nietzsche knew that civilization teaches us to tame the wild within, but he also knew that a life lived only in tameness is a wasted one. He believed in the Übermensch, the one who rises above the herd, who reclaims the chaos within and shapes it into strength. So let me ask you, when was the last time you told the truth even when it shook your voice? When was the last time you said no without explaining yourself? When was the last time you stood your ground even if it made others uncomfortable? That is not cruelty. That is clarity. And clarity is the foundation of power. The world does not need more nice people. It needs more whole people. People who know when to yield and when to roar. People who can sit with their rage and not flinch. People who can love without losing themselves. There is a fire in you. You feel it when someone crosses your boundary. You feel it when they speak over you, underestimate you, guilt you into silence. You feel it when you laugh at a joke that wasn't funny, just to keep the peace. It flickers in your chest, behind your ribs, in your clenched teeth. And then you bury it, because you've been taught to fear this fire, to label it as wrong, dangerous, unattractive. You've been told that anger is a flaw, not a compass, that it makes you irrational, not awake. So you exhale your rage in quiet sighs, hide it behind politeness, and call it self-control. But Nietzsche saw through this lie. He didn't see anger as something to be extinguished. He saw it as sacred, vital, necessary. Not the rage that destroys blindly, but the rage that burns illusions to ash. The rage that says, I will not be used. I will not stay silent. I will not betray myself to make you feel comfortable. He called it will to power, the primal force within every individual, to affirm their own life, their own values, their own direction, not to dominate others, but to stop being dominated by their expectations. But here's the tragedy. Most people have traded that fire for approval. They confuse obedience with virtue, but obedience is not virtue, it's just fear wearing a halo. You say you're just being nice. No. You are abandoning yourself in the name of social acceptance, and the cost? Your boundaries collapse, your emotions fester, your truth rots in your throat, and your rage ignored, denied, humiliated becomes something else. It turns inward. It becomes depression, apathy, burnout. You start to wonder why you're so exhausted, why you feel invisible, why the spark in your eyes has dimmed. This is why. You are angry, and your anger is justified, but because you never learned how to express it consciously. It has no outlet. It becomes sharp and cold instead of hot and clarifying. You lash out in petty ways, or you implode in shame, or you numb out completely. You were trained to believe that good people don't get angry, that expressing discomfort makes you dramatic, that saying this hurts makes you ungrateful, and so you became emotionally polite, spiritually neutered, quiet when you should have roared. Nietzsche believed that modern morality, especially the morality of the meek, was a form of spiritual castration. He called it slave morality, a system designed by the weak to punish the strong, by the powerless to shame those who dared to act, speak, and live without apology. Nice people are perfect slaves. They obey, they don't question, they serve, and they crucify their instincts in the name of peace. But peace at the expense of the self is not peace. It is a slow suicide. You were not born to be docile, you were born to be whole, and wholeness includes fire. Let me be clear. Anger is not evil, it is an alarm. It tells you where your values are being violated. It shows you who you are beneath the masks. And when harnessed, not suppressed, not exploded, but channeled, it becomes clarity, momentum, and truth. Think of the last time you were truly angry. Not reactive, not petty. Angry because someone crossed a line that mattered. Angry because you stayed silent for too long. Angry because you betrayed yourself just to be accepted. That moment wasn't weakness. It was a message from the self, screaming to be heard. But instead of listening, you apologized. Instead of asserting, you retreated. Instead of transforming the rage into truth, you disguised it as kindness. You became agreeable, and then you felt like a stranger to yourself. Do you see it now? Your niceness is not noble. It is the armor you wear to survive a world that taught you your truth was too loud. But Nietzsche didn't want survival. He wanted becoming, a return to your original flame, before it was tamed into obedience. He said one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. And chaos is not disorder. It is the raw, untamed, unapologetic truth that lives beneath your need to be liked. It is the part of you that says, I don't need your permission. I don't need your validation. I don't need to shrink so you can feel big. So how do you reclaim it? You stop apologizing for having needs. You stop sugarcoating your boundaries. You stop pretending that tolerance is strength when it's actually fear. You let your anger rise, not to destroy, but to illuminate. You write it. You scream it. You speak it into clean words. You listen to what it's trying to show you. Because every time you ignore your anger, you lose a piece of your soul. And every time you honor it, you come home. This is where the mask cracks. Not with a scream, not with violence, but with a choice, quiet, internal, final. I will no longer betray myself to be accepted by others. You've tried niceness. You've tried people-pleasing. You've tried self-erasure disguised as compassion. And now you're here, burnt out, underappreciated, quietly resentful, and wondering when it all started to feel so hollow. The answer: it started the moment you prioritized being liked over being real. When you believed that love meant self-sacrifice, that peace meant suppression, that your worth was something to be earned through compliance. Nietzsche rejected that lie with fire. He believed that most people live in herd mentality, not out of malice but out of fear. Fear of standing out, fear of rejection, fear of freedom. Because freedom is terrifying. It means there's no one left to blame, no rules to hide behind, no master to please. Just you, your truth, your values, your path. But here's the paradox. True freedom is not given to you. It's taken, fought for, built from the inside out. It begins when you stop waiting for permission to live on your own terms. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, the overman, wasn't about superiority over others. It was about transcendence over the false self, the conditioned self, the tame, nice, obedient self that nods in agreement while dying inside. The Übermensch is the one who dares to destroy who they were taught to be in order to become who they truly are. But that kind of transformation costs everything. Your approval addiction, your guilt, your victimhood, your need to explain your boundaries to people who were never listening, your fear of being called selfish, arrogant, difficult. And that's the test. Can you live with being misunderstood? Because the more real you become, the more you will disturb those who still live in roles. People will say you've changed, and you have. You've stopped smiling when you're angry. You've stopped agreeing when your soul says no. You've stopped calling disrespect love and self-sacrifice maturity. You've chosen discomfort over self-betrayal, and that is not cruelty, that is sovereignty. The world will not reward you for becoming whole. It will resist. It will call you cold, intimidating, selfish. Let it. Your task is not to be digestible. Your task is to be real. Because something incredible happens when you choose yourself. You stop needing the validation of those who only love the watered-down version of you. You start walking differently, speaking differently. You listen more, not to others, but to your own body. You leave rooms that shrink you. You set boundaries that feel like walls to others, but finally feel like shelter to you. You realize that kindness without clarity is chaos, that love without truth is manipulation, that being nice is not the same as being good. Being good sometimes means being fierce. Sometimes it means saying no, leaving, confronting, protecting your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. And here's the truth that hits hardest. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to hand you power. No one will ever give you permission to stop playing small. You must take it. You must decide, not once, but daily, to stop negotiating your worth, to stop handing out discounts to people who only want access, not intimacy, to stop silencing your voice because someone else might be uncomfortable with your volume. You must decide to be sovereign. Nietzsche said, "Become who you are," and that is the most terrifying thing in the world, because you don't become who you are by reading quotes. You become by burning down everything you are not, every false identity, every inherited belief, every apology for existing. It is brutal, and it is beautiful. Because on the other side of that fire is a person who no longer needs to pretend. You become someone whose love is fierce, not performative, whose silence is intentional, not repressed, whose presence commands respect without ever demanding it. You become the kind of person who walks into a room not asking to be chosen, but already knowing you are enough, not because others agree, but because you finally do. And if you've made it this far, if you've felt the truth of these words in your bones, then you are already crossing the threshold. You are already shedding the nice version of yourself and stepping into something far more dangerous. Yourself. Let the world misunderstand you. Let them talk. You didn't come here to be liked. You came here to become.